In this video, we are going to be covering the major mainstream UFO developments that occurred between September 2020 and May 2021. This video is part 3 in the series documenting the recent mainstream media coverage and statements from various government and military officials regarding UFOs. I recommend watching parts 1 and 2 of this series to familiarize yourself with all the major UFO developments that have occurred since December 2017, when the US government revealed it had a program that studied UFOs. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, whether you think this is a real UFO disclosure, a false flag, the Book of Revelations, black budget tech, foreign adversary tech, or Defense Department ploy for more funding, there is no denying that the establishment and the media's tone on this subject has changed in recent years, and more dramatically in recent months. UFOs were once ridiculed, but now they are prime time. I will be the first to say we should be skeptical of the mainstream media and the government, as they have both lied on numerous occasions, and the fact that UFOs are even becoming mainstream now is an indication of past deceit on this subject. Nevertheless, it is worth being aware of these establishment and government shifts on UFOs, wherever you fall on the UFO spectrum. The more recent UFO events we will be covering in this video seem to be surrounding new leaked footage and a looming UFO report that the intelligence agencies are tasked to create by Congress. We will be covering this upcoming report in greater detail later in this video, but first I want to quickly recap some less recent UFO events that led to this upcoming report to give some context for people who have just recently become interested in this subject. If you are familiar with the UFO events that occurred between December 2017 and most of 2020, skip ahead. Following a wave of civilian and military UFO sightings in the 1940s and 1950s, the US government, and more specifically the Air Force, began 3 separate investigations into UFOs. They came to the conclusion that there was nothing to see here, and the issue was laid to rest.
Our critics continually charge that the United States Air Force is withholding information from the general public on this subject. This is absolutely untrue.
And there's nothing in the records which would indicate that we have been visited by any advanced civilization.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
It should be noted that some of the participants of these studies would later say they were forced to lie about genuine UFO cases in order to prevent panic.
They handed down the dictum, which then became sort of the unwritten law of the Air Force: don't rock the boat, play it down, cool it, don't get the public excited.
Well, what is your answer to the people who are sure there are spaceships and they say that you and the Air Force are in cahoots? Well, first of all, this business about being in cahoots is just simply a downright falsehood.
And I know, having been in Blue Book for nearly 20 years, that whenever an interesting case came up, the very last thing in the world they would do is to notify the media. And when the media themselves found out something, the Air Force did its best to play it down. It's called it a balloon, called it a star, called it
Balloons, meteors, satellites, aircraft seen with the sun glinting off of them, and the birds.
Following the end of these UFO investigations, the United States government and media treated UFOs like a non-issue, and ridiculed those who pursued the subject. For over 50 years, the government maintained that UFOs were not otherworldly, and maintained that they did not study them. This all changed in December of 2017, when the Pentagon reversed 50 years of policy and revealed that it had been investigating UFOs.
Tonight, CNN has learned the Pentagon had a secretive program to research UFOs like the one Fravor spotted. The project was called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, run by an official named Luis Elizondo.
Also in late 2017 and early 2018, 3 videos were released of UFO encounters had by Navy fighter pilots, along with compelling testimony of various Navy personnel involved.
Fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Ah! They're troubleshooting as soon as I get
Did you box moving target?
No, I took an auto track.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Wow, look at it fly!
We met Commander David Fravor, who had a UFO encounter while he was a Navy fighter pilot in 2004, and Lou Elizondo, who ran the Pentagon UFO program. Both men gave interesting interviews at this time.
Spot where they tell us it's at, we start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today.
Up front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell. Abilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
Following the release of the 3 UFO videos, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence began receiving classified briefings on UFOs from various military and government personnel.
Is something really out there? 3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs at the Pentagon, or in current lingo, unidentified aerial phenomena.
The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence is responsible for overseeing the United States intelligence community. Some notable senators on this committee who have been vocal about the UFO issue are Democrat Mark Warner of Virginia and Republican Marco Rubio of Florida.
Concerned should we be about the briefing that you received on UFOs? Is that a concern that for pilots? Is there anything you can mention to us about that?
Well, I think some of the press reports are accurate. I think people are taking this issue much more seriously, and I'm not going to get into any of the contents of the briefing. It was a classified briefing, but what I think one of the key takeaways I'd have is that the military and others are taking this issue seriously, which I think in previous generations may not have been the case.
Look, here's the interesting thing for me about all this, and the reason why I think it's an important topic, okay? And that is, we have things flying over our military bases and places where we're conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. So that's the legitimate question to ask. I would say that, frankly, that if it's something of outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or the Russians or some other adversary.
Another notable former member of this committee was then Senator Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is now the vice president, so I think it is important to note that she too received these classified briefings on UFOs. Following these briefings, legislation began circulating and eventually drafted that called on the entire intelligence community to create a report within 180 days on UFOs for Congress and the American people, revealing as much as they could about the UFO phenomena. The legislation was prepared, but it had not yet been signed into law, and the countdown for the 180-day report had not yet commenced. And that is where we last left off in terms of the events leading to this upcoming report, waiting for the legislation to be signed into law. Keep all of this in mind as we now continue on the more recent developments. The first new development we will be covering occurred in September of 2020 in Japan, where the Japanese Ministry of Defense stated that they have been working together with the US military to develop policies on how to track and deal with UFOs. Japanese Defense Minister Taro Kano met with United States Defense Secretary Mark Esper over this matter. It is significant as it shows that the UFO issue is not just an American issue, and if you watch some of my other videos, you know countries like Brazil and China also take this issue seriously. Here is a local report on the new Japanese UFO protocols.
河野防衛大臣は自衛隊が未確認飛行物体に遭遇した際の対処方針を間もなく発表すると明らかにしました。
対処方針についてはもう間もなくでございます。はい。日米につきましては先日のグアムでのエスパー長官との会談の中でも話題に上りました。
河野大臣は先月の日米防衛相会談で自衛隊とアメリカ軍の間でも UFO 未確認飛行物体について連携していく方針を確認したということです。自衛隊関係者によると昔よく見たとの目撃情報もあり、今後は撮影することなども視野に対応を考えていく方針です。今年4月、アメリカ国防総省が初めて UFO の映像を公開しました。日本の防衛省も河野大臣が自衛隊が UFO に遭遇した時に備え、手順を定めるとの方針を示していました。
Next, on December 16, 2020, John Brennan, the former CIA director from 2013 to 2017, made the following comments regarding UFOs during an interview. It isn't a grand disclosure, but these statements coming from this level of personnel is significant in my opinion, as it shows the change in tone this topic is receiving in our society.
But I think the important thing for analysts to do is not to go into this type of challenge either discounting certain types of possibilities or believing in advance that it is likely X, Y, or Z. You really have to approach it with an open mind, but get as much data as possible and get as much expertise as possible brought to bear.
So at the end of all that sifting and interpreting, what do you think is the most likely hypothesis?
I don't know. You know, when people talk about it, you know, is there life, other life besides what's in the United States, in the world, the globe? You know, life is defined in many different ways. And I think it's a bit presumptuous and not arrogant for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe. What that might be is, I think, subject to a lot of different views. But I think some of the phenomena we might be seeing continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life.
On December 29, 2020, a new $2.3 trillion COVID relief bill passed both houses of Congress and was signed into law by then-President Donald Trump. Nestled in this COVID relief bill was the resolution establishing a joint task force to investigate UFOs and for the intelligence communities to create the UFO report for Congress and the American people within 180 days. That report must contain detailed analysis of UFO data and intelligence collected by the Office of Naval Intelligence, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, and the FBI. It should also describe in detail an interagency process for ensuring timely data collection and centralized analysis of all unidentified aerial phenomena reporting for the federal government.
The Corona Relief Bill the President signed last month contains a provision that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It directs the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, to disclose what they know about UFOs within 180 days.
Well, if you dig deeper into the big pandemic bill and spending package passed late last year, you'll see an unusual demand.
Yes, U.S. intelligence agencies have less than 6 months to tell Congress what they know about unidentified aerial phenomena, or what you and I might call UFOs.
I've received classified briefing on this, so I can only give you the top line, is that the military has seen enough things where they're actually now encouraging pilots to report. If there are objects flying over military installations, that could pose a security threat. So we, working with Senator Rubio, we put into law a requirement that the Defense Department make a report to this. And this report, on one level, needs to be declassified and revealed to the American public.
Then on March 22, 2021, we got the following interview on UFOs from former Director of National Intelligence during the Trump administration, John Ratcliffe. Some things to consider. The Director of National Intelligence was a position created following intelligence failures of 9/11, as a way to create a single entity that oversees and coordinates all activities amongst the 16 separate intelligence community agencies, including the CIA, the NSA, Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Energy, and many, many others. As far as UFOs are concerned, the Director of National Intelligence is responsible for the report on UFOs to Congress and the American public. Let's listen.
John, you have seen in your role the most intelligence that anybody has seen other than the president as the Director of National Intelligence. And I've been wanting to ask you this next question for a while. I want to ask you about UFOs, unidentified flying objects. The Pentagon is going to come out with a report by June 1st. And in the $2.3 trillion omnibus appropriations legislation passed in January, it includes the Intelligence Authorization Act, money for the Pentagon to continue investigating UFOs. John, we're going to get this report June 1st. Can you tell us, have unidentified flying objects been seen?
Well, sure. We have lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. And this actually is a program that's been in place for a few years in terms of a task force that has been there under the National Defense Authorization Act. But as you correctly point out, Maria, there's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, Maria, we always look for a plausible explanation. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Can you tell us where it was seen?
Actually, all over the world. There have been sightings all over the world. And when we talk about sightings, the other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. And there's actually quite a few more than have been made public. So I think it'll be healthy for as much of this information to get out there as possible so that the American people can see some of the things that we've been dealing with.
Okay, well, that That is pretty extraordinary. We so appreciate that you're talking to us about this. Can this year get any weirder? Pandemic, shutdown, UFOs. John Ratcliffe, it's great to see you. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Maria.
Had Trump won, John Ratcliffe would have been responsible for disclosing this report. So hearing him make these statements is very significant given his previous role in relation to the report. Avril Haines was sworn in as the 7th Director of National Intelligence for the Biden administration on January 21, 2021, so she is now responsible for producing this report. Her spokesperson was asked by Politico about this report, to which the spokesperson responded, "We are aware of the requirement and will respond accordingly." Following this interview, there were a few mainstream media articles detailing how this report could be delayed. Politico cited Chris Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, who is currently highly involved with the UFO issue and who helped draft the language included in the COVID bill. Chris Mellon stated, "Just getting access to the information, because of all the different security bureaucracies, that's an ordeal in itself. I know that the task force has been denied access to pertinent information by the Air Force, and they have been stiff-armed by them. That is disappointing, but not unexpected." Another indicator to this report being delayed comes from Senator Marco Rubio, who sits on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Here's an interview he gave on the subject in March.
We don't have to go that far. It's very simple. There are things flying over national security installations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what it is. It isn't ours. We need to find out.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from my standpoint, when I heard John Ratcliffe talk about that, I went and I looked up what you've said about the Pentagon report coming up June 1st. What do you think we're going to learn from that Pentagon report on June 1st?
Well, first, I'm not sure they're going to come in on time, to be honest with you, because they miss a lot of deadlines in government on these sorts of things. But we'll get a report at some point. Second is, I don't know if we're going to know what. I mean, I'm not sure that by June 1st they'll have reached a hard conclusion about what they're dealing with, and there may be more questions or new questions than full answers after the fact. I can tell you it's being taken more seriously now than it ever has been. And look, there's a stigma associated with this, all right? When a Navy pilot would report that they saw something, they were told you need to go see the flight surgeon, so to check out your head, make sure you're not seeing things. So there's a stigma associated with reporting it, even talking to you about it now, right? I mean, people are going to go out and say, look what these people are focused on when the world is falling apart. So there's a stigma associated with it, and that's, I think, needs to go away. We don't have any preconceived notions about what this is or isn't. We just need to know, or we need to start trying to know. I think the first step is to ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get or begin to get answers.
In response to the stiff-arming allegations, John F. Kirby, the current Pentagon Press Secretary and Assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, made the following comments on March 28, 2021.
Thank you. There was a media report that the DoD is kind of not taking seriously some legislation to tell Congress all that it knows about unidentified aircraft, and reports that these aircraft have been around ships and aircraft carriers. And I'm wondering, can you respond? Is the Defense Department taking this seriously?
If you're asking if we're taking our requirements seriously to develop this report and to keep Congress informed, of course we are. But I don't have any details on the specifics of the report itself for you today, Jeff.
Another big development occurred on March 23, 2021, when the Drive published an article titled, "Multiple Destroyers Were Swarmed by Mysterious Drones Off California Over Numerous Nights," which detailed UFO encounters had by the USS Kidd that occurred near the Channel Islands off the coast of California in July of 2019. Through the Freedom of Information Act, writer Adam Kehoe was able to obtain flight logs of the UFO encounters. UFOs swarmed U.S. Navy warships for 3 hours and remained unidentified. The entire article is linked in the description with greater detail of the encounter. One thing I want to highlight is a response to this incident given by the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Michael Gilday. The Chief of Naval Operations is the professional head of the United States Navy and also military advisor to the National Security Council, the Homeland Security Council, the Secretary of Defense, and the President. When asked by NBC News on April 5, 2021 about the 2019 UFO swarm, Admiral Michael Gilday said the incident and other similar sightings were still being assessed. When asked if the Navy had identified the mysterious drones, Admiral Michael Gilday said, "No, we have not. I am aware of those sightings, and as it's been reported, There have been other sightings by aviators in the air and by other ships not only of the United States, but other nations, and of course other elements within the U.S. Joint Force. Those findings have been collected and they still are being analyzed. There is a well-established process in place across the Joint Force to collect that data and to get it to a separate repository for analysis. On April 2, 2021, James Woolsey, the 16th director of the CIA, made the following comments about an alleged UFO experience a friend of his had to John Greenwald of the Black Vault.
We'll know more within a few weeks, perhaps, because there have been, over the years now, events of one kind or another, usually involving some kind of aircraft-like airframe, that has put a number of people into a situation where they'd say, like me, I never thought there was anything to all this. It always seemed pretty far out to me. Don't know what the reality is, but, and fill in the but. There was one case in which a friend of mine was able to have his aircraft stop at 40,000 feet or so and not continue operating as a normal aircraft. What was going on? I don't know. Does anybody know? We'll have to look into it. There have just been enough things like that have occurred that I think there will be a lot of examination of what's going on over the course of the several months, or maybe years, but maybe months.
Next, UFO documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell released a series of new leaked alleged UFO photos and videos, beginning on April 8, 2021. The first new leaked video was released on April 8, 2021, and showed a pyramid-shaped UFO flying over the USS Russell off the coast of San Diego in July 2019. According to Jeremy, this footage was included in the UFO briefings that the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence received.
In night vision video from a Navy destroyer, a mysterious flying triangle above the deck of the ship. The Pentagon confirming the images obtained by documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell were taken by Navy personnel, expected to be a part of a report on unidentified aerial phenomenon to be presented to Congress this summer. Already online, some skeptics say the images are caused by cameras trying to focus, but some of the objects go beyond just flying in the sky. One shows a spherical object dipping into the ocean, similar to an incident in Puerto Rico where an object was tracked buzzing an airport, then flying into the water, popping back out before appearing to split into two and disappearing.
In a response to a FOIA request by John Greenwald of the Black Vault, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goh stated, "I can confirm that the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. The UAP task force has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. As we have said before, to maintain operations security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, the Department of Defense does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or the examinations of reported incursions into our training ranges or designated airspace, including those incursions initially designated as UAP." On May 3, 2021, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General announced that it would be conducting a review of how the Department of Defense has treated the UFO issue. The May 3rd statement reads, "We plan to begin the subject evaluation in May 2021. The objective of this evaluation is to determine the extent to which the Department of Defense has taken actions regarding unidentified aerial phenomena. We may revise the objective as the evaluation proceeds, and we will consider suggestions from management for additional or revised objectives. We will perform the evaluation at the offices of the Secretary of Defense, Military Services, Combatant Commands, Combat Support Agencies, Defense Agencies, and the Military Criminal Investigative Organizations. We may identify additional locations during the evaluation." Then on May 14, 2021, Jeremy Corbell released another leaked UFO video that was included in the intelligence briefing. This UFO video is unique in that it shows the UFO either submerging into the water or disappearing.
took off, was booking it.
Break Omaha, Pickney Kid, Rafael Peralta, passability to launch helo ASAP.
Splashing and bearing a ring. Sure. Got 2 minutes, 30 knots. Keep going, bro. Let's go down. We're making 10, so we could probably bring down 35 relative speed. Sir.
Yeah, that brings it.
We got a lot of white water out there, some 6-foot swells. Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splashed. Splashed. Mark bearing and range.
This video was recorded on July 15, 2019, at 11 p.m. off the coast of San Diego. According to Jeremy's sources, these objects were 14 in number, self-illuminated, 6 foot in diameter, they were picked up on 2 types of radar, their origin was never determined, and no wreckage was ever found, even though a submarine was dispatched to investigate. Interestingly, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goh had a reply ready for this footage out within an hour. She stated, "I can confirm that the video was taken by Navy personnel, and that the UAP task force included it in their ongoing examinations." This leak, along with the looming report, caused a media blitz, with many different stations covering it, and a primetime segment on 60 Minutes that seriously handled the UFO issue. The 60-minute segment included interviews with Lou Elizondo, Fravor, and for the first time publicly, Navy pilot Alex Dietrich. There were a couple notable reactions to this media blitz. One coming from James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence from 2010 to 2017, a majority of Obama's presidency. On May 16, 2021, he made the following comments.
I also want to turn now to talk to you about UFOs, because a former Navy pilot gave an interview to CBS News in which he says flight crews observed UFOs off the Atlantic coast every day. Here's a clip from that.
So you're seeing it both with the radar and with the infrared, and that tells you that there is something out there.
Pretty hard to spoof that. Every day for at least a couple of years.
Wait a minute, every day for a couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
So next month, a government report is expected to be made public on the sightings of UFOs. As the former director of national intelligence, I think there have been a lot of theories about UFOs. What do you make of these revelations? What might this be? Have you seen any yourself? What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it is kind of, there is logic to the intelligence community addressing this, since the intelligence community has a lot of practice of dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts. And secondly, I think it's really important that whenever we witness such phenomenon, that it is recorded and documented for the future. When we may gather more information and have a better understanding of what's transpiring. Could there be life out there? Sure. As huge as the universe is, we really can't reject that possibility. So I think this is a good thing. The transparency, I expect this report will be filled with ambiguity as well. And people, depending on their leanings, will extract what they want out of this report.
How it always goes, right? Where there is ambiguity, people can pull what they want from it. But it does sound like it is, something that we haven't seen before, this type of transparency around this topic.
Yes, and I'm not sure why that is. The only reason to me, for classification would be if there's some sensitive method that data relating to so-called UFOs was collected. But other than that, I don't know why we haven't been more transparent about it in the past, and I'm part of that crime, I guess. And my former capacities were, I didn't insist on more transparency with respect to this issue.
Then on May 18, 2021, former President Barack Obama made the following statement.
What is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is. But I have nothing to report to you today.
A statement like this from a former president cannot be understated. And that is pretty much caught up with the big events. There are some things I left out in the interest of time that are linked in the description about some UFO sightings had by commercial jet pilots. But to recap, we are on the eve of this UFO report for Congress, though it will likely be pushed back. There are a few new leaks and a new partnership with Japan. And we had some major statements from 2 former directors of the CIA, 2 former directors of National Intelligence, the current director of National Intelligence, various Pentagon officials, the chief of naval operations, statements from both Democrat and Republican politicians, and a former president discussing this subject in a serious manner on the mainstream media. All of this happening together is very coordinated in my opinion, and like I said in my intro, we should be extremely skeptical of the government and media given their past treatment of this subject. But regardless of where you fall on the UFO issue, it seems like things are going to continue to get interesting.